In the box office top 10, sorry,
yes.
everything is taking me longer. At number 10 is Sentimental Value, which is number 18 in America. And if ever there was a movie which is going to generate sentimental and emotional emails, it's this film. Josh says,
Yes.
I recently took a long trip to see Sentimental Value at the World of Cine. I'm a manager at a small independent cinema, so it pains me to visit the competition. Unfortunately, we were not screening Sentimental Value. I have struggled with mental health problems throughout my life, many of which stem from a feeling of abject loneliness. My father was and still is not particularly interested in me and shows much more love and care for my sibling. This film's themes of fatherhood and uncomfortable familial dynamics really hit home with me. I see the father's struggle particularly whenever he goes from being with others to being alone. The mask seems to drop, which for me and anyone who's ever battled depression is a common trick, the facade kept up not to let anyone else know your true feelings. Fortunately, these mental health struggles are mostly behind me, and I hope that the film touches anyone who is struggling particularly with loneliness or suicidal thoughts and encourages them to connect with the world around them to find those hopeful moments and the reasons to keep going. Art, music, film, family, or anything else. To anyone out there struggling, you are not alone. We love and appreciate you. Thank you, Josh. Also,
Yes.
This from Rebecca. I find myself so strongly compelled to write in about a film which very much lived up to its title that I'm typing this from under the shelter of a shop front as snow falls around me in Sheffield. So that's how keen Rebecca is to send in this email.
Wow.
I've just left a showing of Sentimental Value, and it was a journey, all right. I found the first third also a bit slow going, and it struggled to captivate me. Then, as the difficult dad-daughter dynamics amped up, I found myself considering leaving as I lost my dad unexpectedly a few months ago, and it all felt a bit much. Especially so as my relationship with him shared many of the same difficult dad-daughter dynamics so masterfully portrayed in the film, meaning after having initially struggled to be captivated, it now felt deeply personal.
Yeah.
There's a tree being chopped down outside, by the way, for which
We can hear it.
I stayed because I wanted the payoff, the redemption, perhaps seeking a resolution I felt that I never had. And I'm so glad I stayed because the second half completely blew me away with an hour of cinema that seemed to pass in a flash, where the barrage of emotion was subtle in its nuances, yet also crushing with its blows. I felt fairly level watching the credits until I remembered I was sat there in the cinema with the scarf my dad had bought me a few Christmases ago and proceeded to have a strong but satisfying cry that caused the cinema ushers to quickly exit soon after entering to clean up in order to leave me to it. So well done to the ushers. Yeah. Overall, I found it a brilliant piece of filmmaking made by people with true insight into the human condition. And for the payoff, the last time I spent with my dad before he became unwell is one of the best memories I have with him. It was one in which we spent meaningful time sharing in something we both loved, and in that manifested our love for each other. So I think we did have our redemption. That's Rebecca. So, here's the machine of empathy again. Thank you, Josh, for your email. Thank you, Rebecca. All about Sentimental Value. It's at number 10.
I mean, it's lovely to hear those responses. Have I told you that my story about I did an onstage interview with Joachim Trier at the end of the year? Have I told you this already?
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but
I'm going to. Okay,
on.
So I mean, I love Sentimental Value, and I'm a big fan of him as a filmmaker. And I was waiting backstage in the green room at the BFI, and he came in. And I put my hand out to shake his hand, and I said, Joachim, I'm so, it's such a pleasure to meet you. He said, we've met. I went, what? He went, yeah, we've met. And I looked at him. He said, back in the previous times, it must have been the 90s, he said, you used to present a program on Channel 4 and I said, about short films. I said, Shooting Gallery. Yeah. And he said, yeah, I did do that. And he said, and you got young filmmakers who had made short films. And every now and then, if you found one that you like, you interviewed the filmmaker. And I went, yeah. He went, well, I was one of those filmmakers. You watched my short film. You liked it. You interviewed me about it. And I told you at the end of the interview, my ambition is that I'm going to make a feature film and you're going to review it. Isn't that brilliant? Wow.
Yeah, that is. And no, I don't think you had told that story
Okay,
before.
Well, there we go. So I'm starting the new year with the New Year's resolution of telling Simon stories that he hasn't heard before.
Okay, and there's one.
Yeah, but it was, partly that made me think, wow, I'm really old. But also how brilliant that short filmmaker did indeed go on to be Joachim Trier.
A maker of short films, I suppose.
Most of that short. That's but not like Martin
filmmaker.
Scorsese. There's a thing on the internet of Don Rickles doing a Martin Scorsese roast, and he says, Marty, somebody get him an encyclopedia so he can see.
Am I the only person who finds the whole roasting thing really quite unpleasant?
Yeah, it is weird and unpleasant, yeah.
You know, so someone spends 10 minutes just slagging off someone who's probably just pretty good and has done some daft things. And it's not, I don't find it funny.
Well, I'd refer you again to my T-shirt. God damn it, you've got to be kind.
Exactly. Number 9. Anyway, look, we've been talking. We're only at number 9.
I know.
Which is Back to the Past, a new entry.
Yeah, so I haven't seen this. This is a Hong Kong historical science fiction action film. It wasn't preview screened before Christmas, but obviously we've been away for a couple of weeks, so there's a couple of things that I've missed, which is this, and also Anaconda, which is coming up in a little bit.
Wicked for Good is at number 8.
Which I like very much. As I said, one particular friend of mine said he was very glad that they split it in 2 because now he only has to watch the first part. But I watched Wicked for Good again over the holiday period, and it worked.
Big Jeff is reviewing Song Sung Blue. Well, he has some comments anyway, which is at number 7. Number 8.
This is the Neil Young film, right?
That's right. Famously.
Famously the Neil Young impersonator film.
Hello to the good doctors. First time emailer, very long time listener, all the way back to the mid-90s. Diploma in drumming, national college level in contemporary and mostly annoying people at gigs in Bristol for the last 20 years. I just went to my nearest multiplex to see Song Sung Blue. Yeah. I'd been drawn in by the film's upbeat-looking trailer and the fact that it had both huge action and Kate Hudson in the leading roles. What I wasn't expecting was to be so emotionally drained. The moments of musical performance are jaw-dropping, interlaced with heartbreaking tragedy. As good as charisma-fueled Huge is, for me the real star was Kate Hudson. The physical transformation of her character and almost sheer determination really resonated with me, being someone who, for completely different reasons, has to live with life-altering injuries. So I completely empathise with her struggles to adapt to a new way of living. I felt the film handled this in a really sensitive way because I too have had days when I didn't want to face the world. The whole rehabilitation process from such injuries can be really tough. I guess this is proof, once again, that you bring to a film and it can have a very profound effect. Thank you, Big Jeff. That Song Sung Blue, new entry number 7.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reviewing it and when I kept confusing Neil Diamond, I did sort of try and say that, of course, it is based on a documentary. And it is a true story, and the most remarkable thing is that the people at the centre of it, the real characters, did indeed endure a quite bewildering array of fortune and misfortune. And what happens all the way through the documentary is that they somehow see it through because they have this belief that the music is everything. And I thought that's what I got from the film. And I agree about Kate Hudson. I think it's her best performance. I think she's really, really terrific in it. And the film utterly charmed me. And I went into it thinking that it was a Neil Diamond biopic. I didn't realize it was about somebody doing a Neil Diamond tribute act. And that just made it all the more surprising. And it was, and I loved how much I loved it.
And I think I mentioned this before, but if anyone likes Neil Diamond music, the early stuff is, which I think it was on Bang Records. So when he was writing I'm a Believer, and when he was writing The Boat That I Rowed, that kind of stuff, which was then taken up and was hits for other, big hits for other people, is still fantastic the way he sings them. So worth looking at the earlier stuff. Number 6, you've already said you haven't seen Anaconda.
Yeah, I haven't. So I will
Granty from.
Oh, great! Somebody's seen it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Granty has, from a village near Exeter.
Fab.
Old Granty. I went to see Anaconda and I took my 8-year-old to keep me company. And therein lies the problem, I think.
Okay.
You don't take your kids to keep you company. A few things to flag. It's a 12A here in the UK, but I was expecting that to be mostly down to the jump scares and large snake-related incidents, which my daughter is okay with. But the film certainly fills its quotas of swears. Many a spit and a couple of flips. So those parents who aren't as laissez-faire as I may need to be aware of this if they're planning to take their kids on a snowy day. Always look at the BBFC app. It'll mention all this stuff. As for the film itself, it's very average. A few laughs, a couple of good Anaconda scenes, but very much played as a pure comedy, but isn't nearly as funny as it thinks it is. The new Anaconda is very much the poor cousin to Tropic Thunder. My 8-year-old enjoyed it. Down with the usuals, Granty from a village near Exeter. So.
If I can just say on the subject of the 12A, as I mentioned, I had a conversation with somebody from the BBFC, and I said, "What's the regulation on spit and 12A?" He said, "You can have as many as you want." And I thought, when did that happen? I was still of the opinion that you could have a certain number, and then after that you'd be pushing it into the 15. But no,
oh right.
No, apparently,
and obviously you can have a couple of flips as well because
which is oh, there we go. Look, we're just old, Simon. Oh, incidentally, I haven't seen the SpongeBob movie either because that came out in the very just before Christmas, and we had a packed show. So I'm sorry, it's not like
the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants is new at 5.
But that 5. I will catch up because I'm actually I liked the previous stuff, so I will.
Zootropolis 2 is at 4.
I enjoyed that. It's kind of Zootropolis 1 was a surprise to me how much I liked it because I liked the way it looked and it was good natured, and I enjoyed Zootropolis 2.
Okay, and Marty Supreme is at number 3 here, number 4 in America. So here we go. Who's this? Andrew. I just went to see Marty Supreme. Loved it in many ways. I think Chalamet's performance was outstanding. I have one big gripe.
Yeah.
The film's maybe crass opening title, which is a CGI rendering of a specific biological process, has Forever Young, released in 1984, played over it. The credit scene has Everybody Wants to Rule the World, 1985, playing. These song choices seem to be purely based on the lyrics and how they mirror aspects of the film rather than actually adding something to the film. It was really disappointing in a film set in the 1950s. Maybe music from that decade would be a bit better. If only we had someone who'd written a book about this kind of thing to hand.
We did talk about this in the review, that it's partly to do. I mean, it's not just that the needle drops are anachronistic. There is some kind of logic as well behind the synth stuff, because the 50s is really when you get the rise of electronica in terms of music and film scores. Obviously, Forbidden Planet being the first ever solely electronic film score. So there was a whole discussion about what the anachronistic needle drops are doing. As you said, we will be talking more about needle drops in Take Ultra. But yeah, I know it's one of those things that if it starts to not work for you, it can become very distracting. But I have a quite open-minded attitude toward it, which is like, if it works for the drama, then it works for the drama.
Okay. Here's an interesting observation from Oliver Cousins in The Elephant and Castle.
Yes.
And he says in his sign-off, he's an advertising guy, as we are about to discover.
Okay.
Simon and Mark, I watched Marty Supreme at the Didsbury Cineworld on opening day, which is Boxing Day, with my girlfriend, brother-in-law, sister, and dad. We all thought it was great, with the most enthusiastic praise surprisingly coming from my old man, whose favourite film is The Sound of Music. I think it's Chalamet's best performance to date, as Safdie takes the style and formula of Uncut Gems and softens the edges to make something more palatable for a wider audience. Beyond the actual film, I found myself swept up by the marketing, and I think the industry can learn from it. And bear in mind that he's an advertising guy.
Yeah.
For example, one battle after another is set to sweep the awards, yet forecast to lose around $100 million. Why? I would argue because of lack of storytelling off-screen. My take is that Marty Supreme has the best marketing campaign since Barbie, but with more achievable lessons. First, the film created its own IP from scratch. Unlike Barbie or RuneScape, which draw from globally recognized brands, Safdie created something himself, which is instantly recognizable in the orange ping pong ball and the film's namesake. Surprisingly, the ball is a minor plot detail, yet its shade of orange has become synonymous with the film's identity.
It has, yeah.
Then there was the fake marketing Zoom call. A24 released a spoof video in which an unhinged Timothée Chalamet pitches a Marty Supreme blimp to nodding executives. It went viral, and then the real blimp appeared over Hollywood. The centerpiece of the campaign is a jacket not even featured in the film. Pop-up shops appeared in London and New York, with fans queuing for hours, which celebrities were photographed wearing it. But the cherry on top was something completely off script. Chalamet became caught up in a music industry rumor that he is the newly emerged Liverpudlian grime artist, SD Kid. When asked about it on Marty Supreme press junkets, he smiled and said no comment, until SD Kid released a new track featuring Chalamet himself rapping about Marty Supreme in a council flat kitchen. So yes, Marty Supreme is A24's most expensive film to date, but I'll bet it becomes its most successful. It just goes to show you can't have the best product in the world one battle after another, but people can't buy what they don't know exists. Marketing supreme, says Oliver Cousins.
Okay, that's very well argued. There's a couple of things which we should point out, however. Marty Supreme, and I'm just looking at this from the wiki page, the budget of Marty Supreme was between 60 and 70 million, and its box office is currently 60, so it's got a way to go to wash its face, because the old formula used to be that you have to do twice the box office in the US in order for a film to do well in its international release. One Battle After Another has taken 205 million. Okay, so it's not that people haven't seen it. Loads of people have seen it. The problem is it costs somewhere between 130 and 175 million. So the reason that One Battle After Another it has been talked about as being financially problematic is not because people aren't seeing it. It's because it cost the kind of money that in order to make that money back, you have to be making many hundreds of millions. Not 205 million. So although I absolutely agree, you're completely right about the Marty Supreme marketing campaign. It was genius, but the box office thing doesn't quite add up the way you think it does. The great example of this is Cleopatra from the Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra, the Cleopatra. When that film first opened, it was a box office hit, but it lost money. And the reason it lost money was it was originally intended to be two films. And of course, they started filming it twice. They had to shut down the production here and then move it out to Cinecittà. So by the time it was finished as one film, it had cost so much money that, to use the phrase that was used about Waterworld many decades later, there's not enough money in the world to float this boat. Right. There was a joke that when they were making Cleopatra, Fox had the second biggest navy in the world. So the way in which things lose money is often to do with how much they cost rather than how many people went to see them.
And number 2 in the UK, number 3 in America is The Housemaid. Anna in Newcastle or Cardiff says, I wish to draw your attention to the Towering Inferno credit citation game. Yes. If we ever had one.
Yeah, we did.
As you have discussed, Paul Newman and Steve McQueen famously fought to get equal billing and even an equal number of lines. This led to the now famous spacing of their names in the credits. Mm-hmm. 2 names, left and right, with the right slightly higher. Yep. The implication is that both stars have equal status. Remember that bit? Yes.
Yeah, very clearly. We talked about it for months.
Yeah. I have noticed 3 films where this has recently happened. Wicked, The Housemaid, and The Hunting Wives. This is maybe not The Good Doctor's taste. And yes, all-star women. All of these shows put the 2 leading women as equals from the credits. Several of them are also executive producers on the shows. Hence, I want to comment on how an idea born of male ego has led to feminists coming together, or a female sisterhood, where women assert that we're both equal stars, so we deserve the same credits, and even the same pay. Rumoured in the case of Wicked, we work together and for each other and not against each other. So my second point of this email is that I was disappointed with Mark's review for The Housemaid. He compared it to 90s psychological thrillers where there was a crazy woman and women fought against women. It is much better to compare The Housemaid to more recent films such as Gone Girl or A Simple Favour, where women are working against the system or working together. I won't spoil The Housemaid, but it's good fun. Amanda Seyfried and Sydney Sweeney are excellent, and it's not trying to be anything clever. It's directed by Paul Feig, Anna says. Also, so much of it is refreshing compared to decades of film that chastise women for certain choices or set them up as the enemy rather than the agents in their own stories. Have any of your good listeners spotted any more shows with equal credits, and is it primarily women that are doing this? That's from Anna.
I don't know the answer to the question about the credits. I believe that the Towering Inferno credits, it actually wasn't the first time it was done. I think somebody wrote in and corrected us and said that had been done before. And it has obviously happened since. On the thing about the movies to which I'm comparing Housemaid, it's because actually stylistically, Paul Feig himself says this, there are 2 throwback things. One of them is to the kind of the film noir, but the most sort of populist reiteration of that model was indeed in those films in the 90s. Although you make a good point about the women working together. The main thing about that film is it is ripe as cheese. I mean, it is. I think it's. The question I had about it was, is the camp intentional? Because some of the very best camp is unintentional. But of course, it's not like Paul Feig doesn't know what camp is. So, I mean, I enjoyed The Housemaid. I enjoyed it, but it was bonkers and absolutely ripe as anything.
So, to no one's great surprise, number one is Avatar. It's not just number one, is very
massively
number one.
Yeah.
So, there are lots of emails with people who agree with you, Mark, but Neil Aldridge. So I'm just looking for an email that makes a slightly different point.
Sure, go ahead.
Neil Aldridge, World Press winner, 2014 European Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and 9th place in the 1995 Under-14 Single Sculls. Anyway, the photography is the key thing here. Mm-hmm. Neil says, I've spent the last 15 years working as a photojournalist, trying to capture photographs that show what we are doing to the world and working with people who are in touch with it and trying to protect it. One thing I have learned in this time is that everyone takes in information and inspiration in different ways. Many people just aren't ready to look at the world in the way that I do and look at the stark evidence of what we are doing to our planet. And that's where the creative brilliance of Avatar comes in. If James Cameron and his team can entertain millions of people with a fantasy while also planting in them a seed that it's okay to change, to stand up to greed, and that it's right to listen to the generations, they will inherit a planet shaped by our choices and lack of willingness to act. Then they will have done their job, and they will have done so whilst taking inspiration for so many of the mythical creatures in Avatar from the real wonders of Earth that we stand to lose. Watching Avatar is like looking in one of those warped mirrors at a fun fair. Sure, it makes people look a lot taller and everything a little bluer, but it's still a mirror nonetheless, and it's worth remembering that. Thanks to you and your team. Hello to Jason, of course, tickety tonk. Down with that guy over there doing that thing, and up with fighting for what you believe in. Thank you, Neil. Anyway, I just thought, there are people who agree with you. Of course there are, but I just thought it was interesting if you're approaching it from the point of view of someone who is in despair about people not caring about the state of the world, that if a movie comes along and says, you know what, maybe we can do something, then it's an interesting opinion, I think.
It is, and that's a perfectly valid point. And I'll refer you to the fact that I have said on several occasions, and I don't say it fatuously, that almost everything I know about politics I learned from the Planet of the Apes movies. And when I was a kid watching the Planet of the Apes movies, which a lot of people sneered at, understandably so, was an education, because each one of them was about a different thing. And in the same way that later on the George Romero Dead movies, each one of them was about a different thing, and whether it's consumerism or racism or capitalism or whatever it is, and you're absolutely right. If a film can give somebody a positive message, no matter how much a sniffy critic like me thinks it doesn't like it, then good for it. Again, we keep coming back to this thing. People's responses to movies are so personal. A couple of people said to me, well, you were completely wrong about Avatar. It took just taking all this money. I said, I know. I said in the review, it's going to take a fortune.
Yes.
Of course it's going to take a fortune. And also, in a way, I feel fine about saying whatever I say about Avatar, because it's not going to make any difference.
No.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? That's the thing. But thank you for that email. That's you make a very good point.
And also, if you step back into the situation around the world, this is particularly a point not just from the new one, but from the last one. If a movie comes along and says, those very powerful people with all those weapons, what they're doing is not the right thing.
Yeah.
And saying that to an audience which is like 10 times bigger than anything else we're talking about.
Yeah. No.
Then maybe some good will come out of it.
Yes, precisely.
That's
so.
what I'm saying.